Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Morecambe Museum of Fashion. Before we go up to the fashion exhibition Clothes of the Future, I would like to show you some slides on the screen and say a few words about the history of fashion. I will also mention some of the important people in fashion. This will provide an introduction for you and will prepare you for the clothes that we're going to see in the exhibition. As I'm sure you know, nowadays fashion is something that almost everybody enjoys. People of all age groups and all incomes usually have an interest in what they wear. But this has only recently happened, and I will tell you why. Until the beginning of this century, it was only the rich who could afford to follow fashion. There were no factories to make many copies of the same article as there are today. Rich men and women wore trousers, jackets and dresses which were made especially for them. This picture here shows a young lady being measured for a dress that she will have made by hand, exactly how she wants it to be. Ladies' clothes in those days were long and usually tight-fitting and made of heavy material. However, the new century, the 1900s, brought new ideas. The important person at this time was Coco Chanel, who started making clothes in 1908 in Paris. Many people think she was the 20th century's most important influence on fashion. Chanel loved to wear loose-fitting clothes and produced jackets and skirts which everyone admired. Here's a picture of one of her ladies' suits. Even today, people still wear styles like this when they want to look smart. Young Paris designers all began to produce simple clothes and skirts started to get shorter. The idea of special clothes for playing sports also became popular in the early 1920s. Things like long shorts and tennis clothes started to become fashionable. Soon, factories produced these new styles more cheaply. And then many more people were able to enjoy fashion. In 1947, after the Second World War, Christian Dior used all the new materials available to produce a fashion which was known as the New Look. As you can see in this picture, he made skirt lengths longer again. Later, in the 60s, flower power and student fashion were popular. In London, Mary Quant introduced short skirts. These were worn with boots that went up to the knee. Look at the white, shiny boots in this picture. And now we come to today's exhibition. Some of the clothes you will see today will be very different from anything which you have seen before. The exhibition aims to take a look at the sort of clothes that we might wear in the next 50 years. Let's go inside and have a look at the exciting clothes that are waiting for us. This way. Right, everyone, about the trip to the Jubilee Arts Centre next Wednesday. As you know, we have tickets for the centre's 2 theatres and the concert hall. Those of you with concert tickets will hear piano music by Chopin and Schumann. Those with tickets for the main theatre will see Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, while people going to the smaller theatre will see The Wild Duck by Ibsen. Although all the theatre and concert tickets have gone, if anyone else would like to join us on the trip, I can get tickets for the Arts Centre Cinema to see the Australian comedy film Spider and Rose. The shows begin at 7:30, but we'll leave early so you can spend time looking round the Arts Centre. The coach will leave here at 3:30 and arrive at the Arts Centre at about 4:45. Let me tell you what you can do there. The centre has a lot for art lovers. In the art gallery, there's an exhibition of the history of Russian ballet. It has dresses and shoes worn by famous dancers and photos of past performances. With your student card, you can get in very cheaply. There are also some interesting free exhibitions. On the ground floor, you can see prize-winning paintings from a children's competition and gold jewellery made by Scottish artists. On the first floor, there's an exhibition of South American photographs, and there's no charge for that either. I know some of you hope to do some shopping. The centre has a bookshop on the first floor, and there's a souvenir shop by the ticket office. If you're more interested in clothes and shoes, there's a large shopping centre, 5 minutes walk from the Arts Centre. You'll probably want to eat before the show. The balcony restaurant has a menu with a wide range of meals and waiter service, but it is rather expensive. Or there's the Fountain restaurant, whose special 3-course dinner is good value for money. There's also Charlie's Coffee Bar, which serves coffee, sandwiches and cakes. You can get fruit juices and ice cream from the cinema kiosk. After the shows, the coach will pick us up at the Bridge Street exit. Everyone should be there by 10:20. The 2 plays will finish at around 10:10 or 10:15. I'm afraid concert goers will have to wait, as the concert finishes earlier, at 10:10.
Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. I've come along to talk to you about my painting. It was just a hobby, but it's really more than that now. I used to paint in the evenings, after work, but now I work 4 days a week instead of 5. That means I spend Friday, Saturday and Sunday on my painting. I have pictures in local exhibitions at least once a month. I'd love to give up my job and spend all my time painting, but I work with computers and I earn more that way. I do make some money from selling my pictures, enough to pay for all my paint, brushes and paper, and a few art lessons. I'd love to go to art college full-time for 3 years, but I've got all the rent on my flat to pay and a car to run. I first became interested in art when I was at primary school. I used to go out with some paper and a few pencils during break time and draw anything I saw. Houses, gardens, people. Then at secondary school, we had art classes twice a week, and I learnt how to use chalk, and then different kinds of paint, watercolours, oils and so on. Those classes were really useful for me, and ever since then I've had lessons of some kind. I've attended evening classes and been on what they call painting holidays, where you go out into the countryside and paint during the day, and then sit and discuss your work with a teacher and the other artists after dinner. Those holidays are great. You learn so much talking to other people studying with you. I've enjoyed painting in lots of different countries. I've been to Morocco and painted desert scenes with beautiful sunrises. I've been to Greece and Spain and painted pictures of the local people working in the fields near their homes. My favourite place is still Scotland. I love walking in the Scottish mountains, and there are so many different birds to see, especially in spring. Well, I'm going to finish now by showing you a video of the places I visited. After that, there'll be a chance to relax with a cup of coffee, and then there'll be time for some questions. Oh, and I've got some information about my next art exhibition for you. It's going to be at the Queen's Gallery. Now, if someone would turn off the lights, then I can... Welcome to this week's book programme. We've got lots of great new books to tell you about. My Life by Joe Wrigley will keep all fans of Joe's stories happy for hours. It explains a lot about where his ideas come from and gives a picture of what was happening in his life when he was working on his most successful books. I must say, though, that some of it is difficult to understand if you haven't read his other books. Now, for those of you who like a good cry, Goodbye to the Fields by Susan Marks tells the sad story of John, a small boy who has to leave the countryside he loves when the family moved to London because of his father's job. John and his mother would prefer to stay where they are. It's a long time before the family begins to feel comfortable living in the big city. There are plenty of books with helpful advice this week. First, the A to Z of photography would make a great present for anyone just starting out with a camera. It has everything you need to know to take really good photos and learn about cameras, film, lighting and so on. This is not one for the experienced photographer, though. There's not much advanced information here. Turning to the kitchen, Cooking for One by Adrian White says on its cover that even people who hate cooking will find it useful. A month ago, I couldn't even boil an egg, but now I'm producing all sorts of dishes, some quite difficult, and yes, they taste quite good too. I'm actually enjoying cooking now. I'm now going to try a new book about cooking Italian food. The last book this week is Holidays in Europe by Mary Curtis. This is an enjoyable read, which will start your imagination working as you plan for next year's holiday. It doesn't matter that the writer doesn't talk about the famous places everyone visits, but describes lots of small places away from the main tourist areas. The maps are too small to be useful, but the book is still good value for money. That's it for this week then. Next week, there's a special report on giving books as presents. So, if you've saved up your money and you're wondering what to get for a friend or relation for their birthdays, you might get some good ideas. I'll look forward to talking to you then.
People always ask me why I only travel the hard way. A lot of television travel programs are about relaxing holidays on the beach, but I've only ever made documentaries about really long trips. The last trip I did was a 50,000-mile journey around the Pacific Ocean, and it took 12 months. But then my very first trip was a round-the-world journey, and the most difficult one was probably a car journey from the North Pole to the South Pole. As you can imagine, I've seen a lot of the world. I'm lucky to be in really excellent health, but life is very short, and I've done so much travelling that I want to change. Travelling long distances makes you extremely tired, and although it's still a great pleasure for me, I want to do something more relaxing now. I think my next television series might be made nearer England. There's some really interesting work going on in Wales, where they've just found what remains of a 2,000-year-old town. Or I might do something about farms in France, or even cycling in Holland. There's always something to film, if you look hard enough. But I hope the programmes I've made about the really long trips will encourage other people to get on a plane and have some adventures. Some people seem to be afraid of going to a strange country and perhaps being ill there, but maybe they realise now that if I can do these trips, so can they. I'm only a very ordinary person, and obviously you don't have to travel on your own, as I always have. I must say that until recently I hadn't ever worried about being so far from home, even when the children were very small. But while I was filming in Borneo last year, my wife had to have an emergency operation, and it really frightened me because I couldn't get back to England. Everything was fine in the end, but I wouldn't want to be so far away if anything like that happened to my family again. Perhaps if I spend more time at home, I can do more writing. I've done 2 books so far. I write about places I've seen and my feelings about them. I don't think I'll ever write fiction or poetry, but I'd be interested in writing newspaper articles. My family says I'm very difficult to live with when I'm writing at home. Perhaps that's why they've never complained about me travelling, eh?
With us today to tell us about his trip across Africa is the biologist Paul Hart.
We started on the east coast and travelled on foot across Africa to Gabon, collecting plants and flowers along the way. It wasn't easy, but my route crossed a region rich in plants, and I chose it because it won't stay that way for long when more roads are built. It was my only chance to get important information about the natural life of the area. I had a team of 11 scientists. We walked from 6 in the morning, but the forest was so thick it took hours to cut our way through it, and some days we only walked 1 kilometre before dark. Fortunately, we carried special equipment that was very light, and we took as little food as possible, but we were always tired when we put the tents up at night. Sometimes we saw elephants or lions. They were amazing to watch, and never attacked us. Every day I collected plants and added to my notes. There was so much new information to write down. There were, of course, some low points, especially when I got anxious about the team. It was my job to make sure everyone got home safely. Towards the end of the trip, I suddenly discovered one day that the food had nearly all gone. It was strange because we'd brought enough dried food with us to last the trip, food that wouldn't ever go bad, and we'd stopped at villages for fresh food too. But then I found that some of the team had eaten much more than they were supposed to. I was angry with them because it was a silly thing to do. Then we started walking again. There were no maps for the area, but we had a local guide. Then one of the team got sick, and we couldn't go any further. We let him rest, but he got much worse. Thankfully, his life was saved by a fisherman who came along the river in a boat and took him to a doctor in the nearest village. Finally, I returned home, and I'm back with my family and friends. I really missed them while I was away, but I learnt so much on the trip, and I'm really glad I went. I was asked to go on another trip, this time to Australia, but I said that I couldn't because I'm busy here in London, and I think I've done enough travelling.
Hello, I'm Sarah Brown, and I'm here to tell you about my job as a weather forecaster. I've been a weather forecaster for a television company for 7 years, and 2 years ago I became the head of the weather department. Now I divide my time equally between presenting weather forecasting on television and managing the weather department, which has a staff of 11. At 30 years old, I'm the youngest ever head of weather, and the first woman to do the job. Since our news and weather service goes out all round the world, we all take turns to work at night. I prefer that to doing the show when I have to get up at 4 in the morning. I normally work an 8-hour day, and in that time I do 10 or 12 forecasts. Before doing a weather forecast, I study data on the computer. This is the information I use in my forecasts. There isn't much time to learn what I have to say, but fortunately I've never forgotten my words, so I don't get nervous. My husband and I try to have the same free days, but neither of us has a regular pattern of work. He's a pilot on long-distance flights, so although he works hard, he has a lot more time at home than I do. We moved to our present house about a year ago, and he's enjoying painting it. I took up flying as a hobby 5 years ago. I hope to get my pilot's licence this year, but because of the job, I haven't been to the flying school for ages. For exercise, I swim and ski, and I like running. I'm really proud of myself for running in the London Marathon. It's a 40-kilometre race, and I never thought I could manage it. My husband plays tennis, and we sometimes play together, but he's better than me, so I never win. Because I'm on world news, people sometimes recognise me in really distant places. Once, in an Indian village, an old man took me to have my photo taken with all his family. I get some lovely letters. One person wrote to say that my smile made her feel happy all day. People occasionally even write and ask me to marry them.
Thank you all for coming to my talk this evening. It's nice to see so many people in the audience. For those of you who don't know very much about PS Camping, let me start by giving you some background information about the company. The company started 25 years ago. It actually opened as a retail chain selling camping equipment, and then, 20 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK and began offering camping holidays. The company grew rapidly and has been providing holidays in continental Europe for the last 15 years. If you book a camping holiday with us, you'll have a choice of over 300 sites. In Italy, we now have some 64 sites that we either own or have exclusive use of. France is where we have the majority of sites, and we currently have a project to expand into Switzerland. We also have a number of sites in northern Spain, particularly in the mountainous region of Picos de Europa. We've upgraded all these Spanish sites and improved them considerably from their original 3-star rating. We believe our holidays offer superb facilities for the whole family. Parents who want their children to be fully occupied for all or part of the day can take advantage of our children's activities. These are organised by our well-qualified and enthusiastic staff. Each day kicks off with a sports match, perhaps football or volleyball, followed by an hour of drama for everyone. This may include singing or dancing, mime or other activities. In the afternoon, there's a different art activity for each day of the week, including a poster competition or model making. What's more, our sites are truly child-friendly, and with this in mind, we operate a no-noise rule in the evenings. Children's evening activities usually finish at 9:30 or occasionally 10, and from 10:30, holidaymakers are expected to be quiet in the areas where there are tents. We want nothing to go wrong on a PS camping holiday, but if it does, we also want all our customers to be insured. If you haven't organised an annual insurance policy of your own, you'll need to take out the low-cost cover we offer, and we require that you arrange this when you make your holiday reservation. There are many advantages to choosing PS Camping and to recommending it to others. As a regular customer, you'll be kept informed of special offers, and your friends can benefit from 10% off their holiday, or book a luxury tent for the price of a standard one. In return, we'll send you a thank you present, which you can choose from a list of high-quality items.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to have been invited along to your club to talk about our charity-sponsored walking holiday for education aid. I'll start by giving you a brief overview of what it entails. First of all, let me explain what we mean by sponsored here. This is where people promise to donate money to the charity if you achieve your goal, in this case to walk a certain number of miles. Basically, we are organising a 10-day holiday from the 6th to the 16th of November, with 8 days actual walking, trekking in the Samira Mountains. Let's have a look at some of the details. We require you to raise sponsorship money of at least $3,200. paying $250 of it up front as a deposit, and the rest in stages throughout the year. Out of this, about 35% will go on your expenses, and that leaves 65% guaranteed to go to the charity. Which brings me to the most important part. This trek is being specifically organised to help education in the Samira region. Last year we helped train teachers for the disabled, and this year we're focusing on the pupils. Each of the walkers' sponsorship money will go to help an individual special needs pupil in one of the mountain schools. In the second part of the talk, I'll be giving you a lot more details. But back to the basic information. Age limits. This is the second time we've run this kind of holiday, and on the first we even had an 80-year-old. But we found it was wise to establish limits this time. You have to be at least 18, and the top limit is now 70, though you need to obtain a health certificate from your doctor if you are over 60 years old. Now, the Samira Mountains are among the highest in the world, but you mustn't be too daunted. We will mainly be trekking in the foothills only, although there will be spectacular views even in the foothills. However, you will need to be extremely fit if you aren't now and you're interested in coming with us. You have plenty of time to get into shape. You'll be sleeping in tents, so you must have quite a bit of equipment with you, but you will be helped by local assistants. Your bedding and so forth will be carried by them. We ask that you only walk with a small rucksack with needs for the day. I don't think I've really said enough about the marvellous area you'll be walking in. Let's have a look at some of the sights you'll be seeing. Apart from these spectacular snow-covered peaks and valleys, there are marvellous historic villages. The area's been famous for centuries for making beautiful carpets, although recently there has been a trend to move into weaving blankets and wood carving. The people are extremely friendly and welcoming. We deliberately keep the party small in size to minimise disruption to people and landscape.
Welcome to all of you. Can everybody see and hear me? Good. I'm Sally, your guide for this tour of the Bicentennial Park. I hope that you're all wearing your most comfortable shoes and that you can keep up the pace. So, let's get underway on our tour around this wonderful park. I'll start today with some general background information. There used to be a lot of factories in this area until the 1960s. Creating the park required the demolition of lots of derelict buildings on the site, so most of the exciting park space all around you was originally warehouses and storehouses. The idea of building a public park here was first discussed when a property developer proposed a high-rise housing development, but the local community wasn't happy. If the land was to be cleaned up, they wanted to use the site for recreation. Residents wanted open space for outdoor activities rather than housing or even an indoor sports complex. Now, to the Bicentennial Park itself. It has two areas, a nature reserve and a formal park with man-made features and gardens. The tall blue and white building in front of us is called the Tower and is the centre point for the formal gardens. It stands 12 metres high, so follow me up the stairs to where we can take advantage of the fantastic views. Well, here we are at the top of the tower, and we're going to look at the view from each direction. Out to the east, the large buildings about 1 kilometre away are on the Olympic site. There's an indoor arena for gymnastics, a stadium for track and field, and a swimming pool for races and synchronised swimming, and also diving. If you look carefully down there, you can see the train lines. The Olympic site has its own station to encourage the use of public transport. There is also a car park, but it only holds a limited number of cars. The formal park has some specially created water features. If you look out here to the south, you can see a circular ornamental pond. And around to the west,
You can relax and sit on a bench to smell the flowers in the rose garden. And finally, up to the north, if you look in front of you now, there's a lake with a small island in the centre. You can hire rowing boats at the boat shed, which you can't see from here. But if you look through the trees, you can see the cafe, which has lovely views across the water. OK, let's climb down now.
Welcome to Greenvale Agricultural Park. As you know, we've only been open a week, so you're amongst our first visitors. We have lots of fascinating indoor and outdoor exhibits on our huge complex, spreading hundreds of hectares. Our remit is to give educational opportunities to the wider public, as well as to offer research sites for a wide variety of agriculturists and other scientists. Let's start by seeing what there is to do. As you can see here on our giant wall plan, we are now situated in the reception block here. As you walk out of the main door into the park, there's a path you can follow. If you follow this route, you'll immediately come into the rare breeds section, where we keep a wide variety of animals, which I shall be telling you a little more about later. Next to this, moving east, is the large grazing area for the rare breeds. Then further east, in the largest section of our park, is the forest area. South of the grazing area, and in fact just next to the reception block, is our experimental crop area. In the middle of the park, this circular area, is our lake. These two small rectangular shapes here are the fish farms where we rear fish for sale. To the east of those is the marsh area, which attracts a great many migrant birds. In the southeastern corner, beyond the marsh, is our market garden area, growing vegetables and flowers. All these areas can be visited by the general public for almost all the year. Although, please take note of the large signs at the entrance to each area, which tell you when certain areas are being used for particular controlled experiments and are therefore temporarily out of bounds to the public. You can see for yourself what a huge area the park covers, and a key question is always, how can we move around? Well, you have a choice of means, all environmentally friendly. Cars are banned in the park. We have bicycles, which you can hire behind the reception block here. The healthy ones of you can go on foot. And finally, there's our electric tram, powered from solar cells. You find more information about this at the front entrance. A good place to start on your tour is the rare breed section. We keep goats, sheep and hens and other kinds of poultry. We're also thinking of bringing in cows and horses, but we do not as yet have facilities for these bigger animals. The animals are fed in public twice a day, and a short lecture given on their feeding habits and nutritional needs. These are very popular with the public, but of course we mustn't lose sight of the main purpose of having this section, not as such to preserve rare animals, but to maintain the diversity of breeds, to broaden the gene pool for agricultural development.
Hello, I'm delighted to welcome you to our Wildlife Club and very pleased that you're interested in the countryside and the plants and creatures of this area. I think you'll be surprised at the variety we have here, even though we're not far from London. I'll start by telling you about some of the parks and open spaces nearby. One very pleasant place is Halland Common. This has been public land for hundreds of years, and what you'll find interesting is that the River Ouse, which flows into the sea 80 kilometres away, has its source in the common. There's an information board about the plants and animals you can see here, and, by the way, the common is accessible 24 hours a day. Then there's Holt Island, which is noted for its great range of trees. In the past, willows were grown here commercially for basket making, and this ancient craft has recently been reintroduced. The island is only open to the public from Friday to Sunday because it's quite small, and if there were people around every day, much of the wildlife would keep away. From there, it's just a short walk across the bridge to Longfield Country Park. Longfield has a modern replica of a farm from over 2,000 years ago. Children's activities are often arranged there, like bread making and face painting. The park is only open during daylight hours, so bear that in mind if you decide to go there. Longfield Park has a programme of activities throughout the year, and to give you a sample, this is what's happening in the next few days. On Monday, you can learn about herbs and how they've been used over the centuries. You'll start with a tour of our herb garden, practice the technique of using them as colour dyes for cloth, and listen to an illustrated talk about their use in cooking and medicine. Then on Wednesday, you can join local experts to discover the variety of insects and birds that appear in the evening. We keep to a small number of people in the group, so if you want to go, you'll need to phone the park ranger a few days ahead. There's a small charge which you should pay when you turn up. I'm sure you're all keen to help with the practical task of looking after the park, so on Saturday you can join a working party. You'll have a choice of all sorts of activities, from planting hedges to picking up litter, so you'll be able to change from one to another when you feel like it. The rangers will be hard at work all day, but do come and join in, even for just a short while. One thing, though, is to make sure you're wearing something that you don't mind getting dirty or torn.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to say a little about two exciting new developments in the city: the Brackenside open-air swimming pool and the Children's Adventure Playground in Central Park. As many of you may know, the idea for these initiatives came from you, the public, in the extensive consultation exercise which the City Council conducted last year, and they have been realised using money from the SWRDC, the South West Regional Development Commission. First of all, Brackenside Pool. As many of the older members of the audience will remember, there used to be a wonderful open-air pool on the seafront 30 years ago, but it had to close when it was judged to be unsafe. For the design of this new heated pool, we were very happy to secure the talents of internationally renowned architect Ellen Wendon, who has managed to combine a charming 1930s design, which fits in so well with many of the other buildings in the area, with up-to-the-minute features such as a recycling system, the only one of its kind in the world, which enables seawater to be used in the pool. Now, there's been quite a bit of discussion in the local press about whether there would be enough room for the number of visitors we're hoping to attract, but the design is deceptive, and there have been rigorous checks about capacity. Also, just in case you were wondering, we're on schedule for a June the 15th opening date, and well within budget. A testimony to the excellent work of local contractors Hickman's. We hope that as many people as possible will be there on June the 15th. We have engaged award-winning actress Coral White to declare the pool open, and there'll be drinks and snacks available at the poolside. There'll also be a competition for the public to decide on the sculpture we plan to have at the entrance. You will decide which famous historical figure from the city we should have. And now, moving on to the Central Park Playground, which we're pleased to announce has just won the Douglas Award for Safety. The news came through only last week. The unique design is based on the concept of the global village, with the playground being divided into 6 areas showing different parts of the world, each with a representative feature. For example, there is a section on Asia, and this is represented by rides and equipment in the shape of snakes, orangutans, tigers and so on, fauna native to the forests of the region.
First of all, let me thank you all for coming to this public meeting to discuss the future of our town. Our first speaker is Shona Ferguson from Barford Town Council. Shona.
Thank you. First, I'll briefly give you some background information. Then I'll be asking you for your comments on developments in the town. Well, as you don't need me to tell you, Barford has changed a great deal in the last 50 years. These are some of the main changes. 50 years ago, buses linked virtually every part of the town and the neighbouring towns and villages. Most people used them frequently, but not now, because the bus companies concentrate on just the routes that attract most passengers. So parts of the town are no longer served by buses. Even replacing old, uncomfortable buses with smart new ones has had little impact on passenger numbers. It's sometimes said that bus fares are too high, but in relation to average incomes, fares are not much higher than they were 50 years ago. Changes in the road network are affecting the town. The centre was recently closed to traffic on a trial basis, making it much safer for pedestrians. The impact of this is being measured. The new cycle paths separating bikes from cars in most main roads are being used far more than was expected, reducing traffic and improving air quality. And although the council's attempts to have a bypass constructed have failed, we haven't given up hope of persuading the government to change its mind. Shopping in the town centre has changed over the years. Many of us can remember when the town was crowded with people going shopping. Numbers have been falling for several years, despite efforts to attract shoppers, for instance by opening new car parks. Some people combine shopping with visits to the town's restaurants and cafes. Most shops are small independent stores, which is good, but many people prefer to use supermarkets and department stores in nearby large towns, as there are so few well-known chain stores here. Turning now to medical facilities. The town is served by family doctors in several medical practices, fewer than 50 years ago, but each catering for far more patients. Our hospital closed 15 years ago, which means journeys to other towns are unavoidable. On the other hand, there are more dentists than there used to be. Employment patterns have changed along with almost everything else. The number of schools and colleges has increased, making that the main employment sector. Services such as website design and accountancy have grown in importance, and surprisingly perhaps, manufacturing hasn't seen the decline that has affected it in other parts of the country.